All right, boys, we are live. This is episode number 44 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction business. Let's kick it off here with a review. This actually came in yesterday, I believe, 19 hours ago. So this is from Nick Herman. He's a plumbing contractor from Minnesota. So slowly starting out a plumbing business, and I stumbled upon Jobtable. Their YouTube and software make everything so much easier and more efficient. One of the founders even reached out and spoke with me directly when I was doing my free trial. So far, I'm very pleased with Jobtable and looking forward to all the growth that will come because of it. Shout out to Nick. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. So we have a very special guest today. We got Ben Bruce joining us from Winnipeg, Manitoba. He runs Highland Electric. Ben's one of those just solid, down-to-earth guys who's really built a really efficient business by focusing on strong processes and systems. We're excited to dive into how he runs things and the lessons he's learned along the way. Ben, appreciate you joining us.
I just want to preface everything by saying too that we pride ourselves on telling people, and we always preach that we keep our ear to the ground, and especially with Jobtable, we love keeping in constant communication with the actual contractors that are out there. And Ben has been, has played a pivotal role in doing so for the last year or so, where he's constantly communicating with us on how we could improve the software and giving us tips or feedback. So Ben, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. And also thank you for that as well.
Yeah, thanks for adding that.
Hey, thanks for having me. I like to say I'm the professional complainer.
No, trust me, it definitely doesn't fall on deaf ears. We appreciate it.
It doesn't, which is one of the reasons why we love Jobtable. We have used so many different bits of software over the years to do various things, and have a little bit of a tech background, we knew that efficiency would come from using some kind of software. Having 5, 6, 7 of them doing various things was just a pain. So I know Costa and I have talked about this before, but consolidating everything, it makes it more powerful. But it's like, if I have to go to one website, why would I go to 5 when I can go to 1?
Yeah, 100%. That's it. That's exactly why we built it, to be honest with you. We ran through the same thing, and again, I don't know if you know the background story behind Jobtable, but originally it wasn't even meant to go to market, right? It was supposed to be used as something internally just for mine and Charlie's plumbing company, with the help of Costa doing that. So yeah, like when we took it to market, when we found out that it was actually powerful enough that a lot of people should be using it, and we took it to market, I know it's guys like you that really, like Charlie said, played a pivotal role, because a lot of things, construction functions in a certain way, and we all have to adhere by those guidelines. But at the same time, the way an electrician sees things, the way a plumber sees things, a roofer, a drywaller, it's all different, right? So a lot of the feedback that you've given, hence why we wanted you on the show, it's been very pivotal, and trust me, we've had lots of internal discussions on your recommendations, and believe me, man, I can tell you're extremely efficient, and that's why I'm very excited to get into this topic today.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say about it. If you're not using something, you're just... Pen and paper is insane. Why, guys? Stop.
Yeah.
And thanks for recognizing that too, because a lot of companies and software companies, they often say it's like, give me feedback, but like we genuinely encourage feedback from all of our clients. Like that is literally how we're improving and adding features, just from the conversations we have with clients like you. So we do appreciate that.
And without exaggerating, we probably have 24 ideas that are currently in development stage that were all Ben's. So kudos.
Have I been complaining that much?
No, the way we look at it is our users are our silent business partners, right? Like that's the reality of it, right? Because the more feedback you can give us, the more we can develop, make the system better, and essentially make your guys' lives that much easier, right? So it to me, I always say it's like it's a partnership, right? When you're jumping onto a software, it's not, you can't just look at it for, you know, this is what you're going to get in a box, right? We want to keep expanding that box and providing more tools based on the feedback, because we might think something is very important to put out, but if we get enough people that are pushing for, you know, a certain feature that we have on the docket, but we just don't find as important. But if we're getting more asks about that feature that we currently have in development, we'll literally switch our whole game plan around, right? Just to get it into the hands of our clients, right? So that's why I say, I again, I can't speak about other software companies, but I can tell you right now that's our motto, that's our bread and butter, and that's how, you know, we function, right? We listen to you guys, right? So it's no different than, you know, having a bunch of employees, right? Like under you, if all your employees are saying like, hey Ben, like I really need this drill is going to help me out so much, right? Like, are you going to care about, you know, getting them a new ladder, or are you going to care about like, you know what, fuck it, let's just buy that drill? You know what I mean? Like we have enough asks for it now.
100%. Absolutely. I think what really got me about Jobtable with you guys was the story too. I'm all about stories, stories behind brands, stories behind companies. I love hearing where people came from, where they're going, why they did what they did, things like that. And you guys have a really cool story.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Ben, I was just looking here. You were actually episode number 3 on this podcast in the early days. So welcome back. But if you don't mind, take a minute and just introduce yourself, kind of what you do, where your business is at now.
Yeah, I'm Ben Bruce. I'm the owner operator of Highland Electric. We've been in business since 2015. We're a relatively small company, usually bounce between, say, like 2 and 5 to 10 guys, depending on the market, because it's so cyclical and changes so much, especially here in the north. We've grown and shrunk. We've definitely shrunk with efficiency. I hate playing that game of hiring guys and firing guys when you grow and compress. So we try and keep everyone we have, every employee you have as an asset, and they're worth investing in. We've just really built a great business around a common set of values. I set out a mission when I started the company. I wanted to do a lot of advocacy for apprenticeship. I want to do a lot of advocacy for construction, because it just feels like we play by a completely different set of rules than everybody else in every other industry. And it's not always in the favor of the majority. There's a lot of guys out there that just, you know, they feel like they're getting screwed by the system. And I wanted to sort of fix some of those things. And I just realized early on that if I didn't play the game, I couldn't fix the game.
I love it. You touched on a few topics that I actually wanted to touch on. But since we're talking about a lot of like efficiency and all this, like one thing that really stood out, and I think why we connected the way we did very early on, is like I personally really noticed like you're very keen and proactive in your business in terms of processes and just maximizing efficiency. And you really understand the necessity that provides to your business. And there are a lot of contractors who think the work itself and the reputation is enough to build and grow their business and sustain it. So in your opinion, like what do you think is that breaking point where a contractor finally realizes, gets smacked in the head that they need to prioritize systems and processes?
I have so many conversations with guys in the wholesaler and other places who are working for someone else. They've got a good career. They're making decent money. Every electrician here in Manitoba seems to want to build their own business, which is great, as long as you have a plan to do it. But you're right. It feels like they all think that, hey, I got a truck, I got tools. All I need to do is slap a phone number on the side, go out, get work, and make money. That's it. That's business. If you're not looking at the bigger picture, if you don't realize that there's so much more to it, you're definitely going to flounder. And I think the breaking point really starts when, for a lot of guys, I think they go in, they're working for someone, they pick up a client or two while they're working for someone else, say, you know what, I can do that cheaper, I can do that better. They get those little jobs, and then they get so busy that they just can't keep up. And so you're either turning clients away, or you're losing on your reputation side because you just can't give the quality or the attention to each client that they actually deserve.
That's true. And like now speaking from my perspective, I'd love to hear what Johnny and Charlie think, same question, but from my lens, just speaking to a lot of small companies starting out as well. The ones that don't make it, 'cause this is a business where, like you said, everyone wants to get into it. They're working for another company. They get a couple side jobs. They think, you know what, I could do this on my own. But oftentimes they don't last. And I think the primary reason why they don't last is because they just don't have processes in place. Like they're running around with their chicken, like a chicken with their head cut off, and like don't know how to manage the business side. I think that's the number one reason why a lot of them don't survive past like a year or two.
Yeah, you gave the example that you gave, Ben, of like, you know, a guy thinking that all he needs to do is just like, I'm gonna get a truck, I'm gonna get some tools, slap a number on the side of my truck, and that's all I need. Look, that can work, and that's how me and Johnny were at the very beginning, the early days. It was just me and Johnny in a truck, right, in a dream. But I didn't get into fucking business to just sit in a truck and just go from call to call all day. Like my idea of being an entrepreneur was to kind of continue to elevate and grow my company. Right. So there are those people that they seem to think that that's what being in a business is all about, and they're okay with that, and that's fine. But to me, that's just creating a job for yourself. That's you know, no more than that. It's not being a true entrepreneur where you're constantly trying to grow your company and make something more of it than just a guy in a truck. Right. I remember when me and Johnny started. At the beginning, I had very like narrow tunnel vision of what being a businessman was, because naturally I was just that guy that was just a union worker, punching in, punching out. So just being in a truck with Johnny kind of gave me that sense of like freedom, where like, fuck, we made it, right? And then I started seeing, you know, we're making just a bit more than we used to. The next thing you know, we're making double than what we used to. So I'm like, okay, like, you know, and you have all your friends kind of cheering you on that were like part of the machine and are still cogs in the machine. Fucking, you know, like, you guys did it, man, good for you guys. And you kind of stop and realize it's like, yeah, but me and Johnny, we're working 14-hour days, right? We're more tired than we've ever been. So it's like, when you actually add up the amount of hours that we're working compared to the money that's coming in, yeah, we're making a bit more, but we're still killing ourselves. So essentially, we just created a job that we're in control of, right? So now, where the process is, and just kind of having that entrepreneurial mind of like not wanting to stay stagnant, is where me and Johnny kind of looked at each other and said, look, your skill is in the office, right? Just kind of like bidding the jobs and learning that world. And I'm on more of the technical side, where I can really kind of see how a job needs to start and finish. And, you know, if we need to invoice a certain amount on this day, I'm going to make sure the job gets done. I'm really good with the guys in that aspect. So it's just having the foresight to kind of see that early on, split up to take on your own roles. And then for me, that was the beginning of the efficiency and the implementation of processes, right? And those are early processes that were put into place. And I think it's very important for people to know that it's before the software came, there's other things that you really have to shift your mentality to, that you're just not a guy in a truck. You're going to be a lot more than that. And if you don't have that mentality, then it's harder to pick up a software, and it's harder to kind of see, hey, these are the steps I need to take. You have to have that mentality that, hey, I'm going to be a billionaire one day, if that's what you want. Like it'll never end, right?
Yeah. And again, like just to piggyback off of that too, Charlie, like when we started, a lot of these tools, you know, were not available to us, right? Like if I started today, like, you know, social media would be a huge avenue, right? Again, using some type of technology to get the name out there. And what I find a lot of times with, like Costa said, talking to these, you know, smaller companies that are just starting out, I can't tell you how many times, like Ben, like people look at us and it's like, I'm just starting out, you know, like I'm not big enough. And it's like, look, man, you gotta stop thinking that, you know, if you're an electrician, all you need is the truck and that number and your tools, right? That is to do the job, right? And again, you've created a job for yourself. But when you own a company, like a lot of people don't understand that it's like that company is its own entity, right? So again, like getting back to what Charlie was saying, sure, we had weeks that we were making double of what we normally did. Right. But if you don't have that mentality where it's like, wait a minute, my company is also like the main employee, like you have to have money in your company. should you have a slow week? Should you have a slow month? Should you have a slow year? Right? So it's the ability to look beyond just, oh, I can do this basement roughing, right? And I could do it for this much and I'll make this much, right? Sure, you're going to make that much, but where's your company going to be in 5 years, right? It's like the 3-5-7 rule, right? It's like, where do you look at yourself in 3 years? Where do you look at yourself in 5 years? Where do you look at yourself in 7 years, right? And if you're going to be at the same point that you are today in 3 years and in 5 years and in 7 years, like, don't, like, to me, and to each their own, but it's like, what are you really doing, right? Like, are you growing anything? Like, just because you're one guy in a truck or you're one guy with a couple of employees does not mean you're too small to start implementing processes. And I'll give you a quick story on this. So I have one of my cousins who's I'm one of those people in the family that everybody always comes to me when they have an issue, right? Whether it's a fucking roofing issue, a flooring issue, even though I'm a plumber, right? And they call me for all the, do you have a guy that could do this? You have a guy that could do that. So I sent him this guy to fix something in his washroom. And he's a great guy. And I've known this guy for 10 plus years. And I've tried to get him on Jobtable before. I've spoken to him about it. I don't push anybody. I'm just like, you should definitely give this a shot. Anyways, he goes and looks at my cousin's house. And sure enough, my cousin calls me after a week. And he's like, hey, I met with so-and-so. Great guy, really nice guy. He's like, but man, I still haven't gotten the quote. He's like, I've sent him a message. Like, do you mind following up with him? Because I feel like, everything went good. He was ready to get started, but I don't even know where he is or what has happened. So I end up giving him a call, and he's the type of guy that will answer my call like almost every time. So I get on the phone with him. I'm like, hey man, like, my cousin's waiting for the quote. And he's like, oh man, I've been working long days. I haven't had time. I got to sit behind my computer and I got to do this. And I'm like, and at that moment, that's when I told him, I said, buddy, I told you, if you had Jobtable, when you went to go look at it, right there on your phone, by the time you get into your truck, the quote is sent off. Now you don't have a guy that's looking at you, like, luckily he's my cousin, but now you don't got a guy that's looking at you saying like, okay, this is what it takes just to get a quote out of him, right? Like, when is it, like, if I tell him to go ahead, is this going to be the same thing for him to show up? And the guy starts laughing. He's like, no, you're right. And it's like, look, dude, I'm not trying to sell you. I don't, the software sells itself. I'm trying to help you. You know what I mean? So after, running your business for 15, 20 years, if you're still going to look at projects and struggling to find time to just quote it, let alone, I don't even want to know what his invoicing is like, right? It's like, at what point are you going to realize that you're going to be one guy in a truck for the rest of your life? And you're going to be struggling and you're going to be trying to buy time every single way. And I always use the same analogy as the power drill, right? When the power drill came out, I guarantee you there was every guy on site that said, what are you talking about? I drill a hole like this, I'm fine. What is this? What do I? It's like, buddy, you can drill 10 holes in the same amount of time that you'll drill one the old way, right? And it's like I find in our industry, it's very hard to teach, an old dog new trick, right? People always try to think you're trying to sell them something. And all you're trying to tell them is efficiency is the biggest tool that we can literally put in our toolbox as an owner of a trades company, right? Buying your time back, because again, like you said, Ben, before we even started airing, last night you were somewhere, you got a call the night before, you're always running around. So now imagine just quoting that, invoicing that, add that on top of it. If you don't have processes and you're not efficient in your business, you'll be sending that invoice 2 weeks later, which means you're going to be getting paid in a month, right? So it never works out like this.
I love story time with Johnny. To everybody out there, listen to the cadence and how Johnny is speaking. That's the sound of a man who's invested in your success. And you're totally right. I was that guy like 7 years ago. It's like, Ben, where's the quote? Like, we got great customers. They want to spend money with you, and it takes you a week to get out a quote, and it's just like, shit. Well, it's no wonder why people are leaving or going elsewhere, things like that. And yeah, I've heard your analogy about the power drill before. It's a good one. But yeah, man, I feel where you are, and it's just funny because it just like all of these memories are flooding back of like, that was me. That was me. I did all of those things. But then you evolve, you come out of it with a plan. And when we're talking about the processes, like ask anyone who builds anything, any craftsman, like, hey, Mr. Framer, how do you frame a house? Well, I don't really have a process. Well, then, like, you're not a framer. Everyone knows, like, if you ask me how to rough in a house, I've got a process in my head of it. If you go into business and you don't have a sales process, you don't have a plan for finances, things like that. I always say business is a completely separate trade. You start a business, you're an apprentice again. You learn from the school of hard knocks. There's very few people out there who instantly will be like, oh, you're opening a business? Let me help you with that. Let me be your mentor. Let me teach you how finances work. Let me teach you how to sell things. It's tough.
That's so
Yeah.
true. Like you're the now like the second or third person that we've had on who's kind of framed it that way, and it's something that we've all known, but it's so true. It's like you go into a trade, you go to trade school to like learn the trade itself, but like when you start your own business, like the business in its sense is like a whole another trade that you have to learn on. It's not just something that you just know how to do. Like you have to figure it out and you have to study it and you have to get better at it, right? It's like two sides to the business. There's
Yeah.
the work and then there's the business. It's like two businesses happening.
Yeah.
You're working in it or you're working on it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, like a lot of our clients, like a lot of our bigger clients, whether it's a GC, whether it's a developer, they all started off as tradesmen, right? But when you go and sit down and you talk to these guys, you can tell like they're businessmen, right? Like obviously very successful, and everybody wonders, oh, how did you get to that spot? Right? And just like Costa just said, it's business, right? Business is a totally different craft, right? Like we say this on the show a bunch of times. You could be the best at your craft, but if you suck at business, you're not going to last. You know what I mean? It's a totally different craft, right? So in order to thrive in business, you got to constantly look at how to be more efficient, right? How to add these processes so that, let's say you start to get more jobs and you need to introduce more employees. Like you said, Ben, right? Are you financially fit for that? And if you're financially fit for that, what's the process on your hiring? And once he starts, what's your process on keeping track of him, right? And a lot of guys, they'll just be like, oh, they text me, or they do this. It's like, look, like everybody also has to look at it from the employee standpoint, right? And we've all been there, right? As tradesmen, we've worked for the one guy in a truck, and we've probably all worked for the big companies, right? What is one thing that the big companies have that when we worked for the little guy and then we went to the big company that we all enjoyed? It's like, fuck, these guys got their shit together. You know what I mean? And when you're working for the small guy, how many times, even guys that we interview for our company, they come here and say, yeah, I was working for this guy, man. Like I would show up at 7:00 on site and I'm waiting 3.5 hours for him just to show up, and it's like, that doesn't look good. You know what I mean? It's not a good look, right? So when you get into business, understand professionalism, efficiency is everything.
John, just to add to your previous point too, because I think we were very guilty of this. I don't know what it is, but when you're starting out, and a lot of contractors I speak to, it's almost like they don't value their time, or there's no correlation between doing paperwork and like as if it's actual work, right? It's like they'll go do a roof, come back, and then they'll spend 6 hours doing paperwork over the weekend, and that's just a part of the job, right? Where it's like those are 6 hours that could have been shaved down to 30 minutes, right? And it's almost like you don't have this concept of value for your own time. And it's not until I actually paint the picture for a person where it's like, if I could save you 30 hours a month, right? And you're billing yourself out at $80, $90 an hour. It's like, you're now complaining that you don't want to spend $80 on a software, but I could save you thousands of dollars, right? And it's not until you paint that picture for them where they kind of stop and think like, fuck yeah, you're right. Even though I'm home, I'm sitting in front of a computer, I'm doing paperwork, and it's taking time away from being with my wife, being with my kids, you know, going out shopping, whatever it may be, right? So it's important to really just take a second and stop and think like, just you being on the tools is not where work starts and ends. There's a lot of aspects to running a company, and having something like a Jobtable or a software is one of the many steps that you need to take in order to make it more efficient and put money back in your own pocket.
Ben, let me ask you this. I know we spoke about it again off air a little bit since we've started here, but since you've implemented Jobtable, right? Like, how much more efficient do you think like you've gotten, right? Like, I know you said you were using like 5 or 6 different platforms before, right? And obviously nothing was talking to anything, right? So just and you could be real, right? But like, since you've kind of like consolidated everything into one, like, have you noticed a difference?
Hell yeah. And not to make like a big infomercial here or anything, but we were using a bunch of stuff, say like just all these different, like ClickUp and Monday.com and some of this other crap. But just, you know, one of them would let me do some project management where I could put like a set of prints onto a job, or a change order. I could post that right away, things like that. And then I needed another one to sort of set up the job and reflect kind of the progression, where we're at, you know, what are our milestones. Having all that consolidated into one place, I don't even know if I can really measure it, because I was doing a lot of manual entry. If you have multiple platforms, you got to take the information from one, move it to another. It's just a pain. Like, and like you were saying, spending a lot of time in the evenings, weekends, things like that, making sure that the guys are set up. Like, never mind just ordering materials or any of the other mundane little stuff, just making sure they have the information on site, so I don't have to, like, you know, literally take them a piece of paper that says what needs to be done that day down there. Stuff like that. It's insane. But a little trick, sort of, maybe that'll illustrate it, is on Jobtable, I made our company a client profile. In the attachments, I've made a bunch of folders, and I put all our SOPs, any information and stuff onto that. Any of the employees can go on there and look. It's like, you don't know how to rough in a basement? Go look up the SOP for roughing in a basement. There should be no reason to call me in the office to say, yeah, how far can I go with a 2-inch pipe before I need a clip? It's all on there. Look it up. It's all organized, real nice and easy. You know, anything. And then other guys can add attachments. Somebody finds a really good diagram for doing 3-way switches. Throw it in the SOPs on Jobtable. Everybody can have it. It's at your fingertips. So it really, you know, even apprentices, it empowers apprentices to go and solve problems themselves, rather than bugging a journeyman or bugging me or anyone else at the company.
I love that. I love hearing stuff like that, because and I hear this so much. That's a beautiful thing about software. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from other clients use the software in certain ways. Like, I've never heard that one before, but I'm thinking like, that's amazing. I think I'm going to create like a YouTube video to share with other clients, right? Because that's such a good use case for that. You mentioned something earlier, and I'm curious to come back to it. You mentioned that trades, it's one of like the only industries that play by different rules. What do you mean by that?
Oh boy, we're getting political.
Nah.
So, I'm not exactly sure for other provinces. Like, you guys are in Ontario, we're in Manitoba, but in Manitoba, there's all kinds of different acts and legislation for various industries. Well, construction has their very own that's just for construction, right? Like, say, the Builders Liens Act. One thing that I got into early on, which was very boring and people didn't realize why I was doing it, was I went and read these acts and figured out, you know, how can I get paid if someone doesn't want to pay me? Things like that. That was a big one. How does my company function within the construction space legally? And these acts dictate how you will do business, and they sort of make that framework of what you need to work within. So let's just like the Builders Liens Act for one. If guys don't know like that they can take people to small claims court, that they can lien buildings, any of these things, what do you do if you don't get paid? Well, now you're going out looking for a lawyer. The easiest example that I've brought up to other people is if you go to a grocery store and you take an apple, or if you go to the hairdresser and you don't pay and you just walk out, those are mostly arrestable offenses. The cops will come down and deal with it. In construction, if you don't pay your contractor, that's a civil matter. Call a lawyer, you'll figure it out in court. And you can just imagine how messy that gets. So when I say we play by different rules, like there's so many like that, and it can get very complex. That's one of the things that I advocate for.
It's something Johnny always says too. It's like, and it's so true, where I can't think of any other industry where, other than construction, where you put up all the money, you do the work, and then you get paid at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes months later.
Yeah, or sometimes not at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I always say, imagine, walking into a restaurant, ordering the most expensive bottle, ordering, a bunch of steaks, the bill comes, it's $1,000. It's like, okay, yeah. Email that to my office and, I'll send you a check in, in net 30, and it's like, what? Like, buddy, you walk out of this restaurant, right, you're either catching a beating or you're walking out of here in cuffs. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a brilliant thing that you did that, right? And I honestly encourage that with everybody, and that's why, we introduced that was one of the biggest things actually when we first developed Jobtable, truthfully, like for us internally, was when I send a quote, I want a signature right on it, right? Because I don't want to get into a dispute with you. I can't tell you how many times we go to do something and, it's like, okay, can you run this pipe, 60 feet, right? It's like, are you sure 60? I think we should do 100, right? Give you a little bit. No, 60's fine. And then you get there and it's like, you finish it. And then the client's telling you, it's like, oh, but you said 100. It's like, no, we agreed on a price for 60. You know what I mean? So this way, no, when I send you the quote, it's going to be very detailed. You're going to sign there, right? Because now I'm obligated to fulfill everything that's on that quote, but now you're obligated to pay everything that's on that quote, right? So if we didn't agree to something, understand, I'm not trying to take it to you, right? I'm just transparent, right? This is what I included for. This is what I haven't included for, right? So don't come to me after. And I tell all our users as well. It's like, how many times have you been burnt by a friend of a friend, or a family member's friend or a referral, right? So stop giving those handshakes, because you're literally playing Russian roulette, right? It doesn't matter. Send the quote. Look, man, I know you. I've known you for many years. Just do me a favor. Sign the quote, right? This way, you know exactly what I'm getting. I know what I have to provide. And this way, if I try to screw you, you try to screw me, we're both screwed. You know what I mean? Get a signature, right? That was, to me, one of the most important features that I wanted. You know what I mean? Because again, this whole dispute thing on projects, on, oh, you said you were going to do this and this and that. No. Let's reference back to what we actually put on paper. You see what I'm saying? That's the most important, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was funny when I first, in the first little while when we were in business, maybe like the first 3 years, I developed a really good contract. And people were always looking at me like, oh man, look at this thing. Like it's in legalese and it's kind of confusing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, if you're not doing contracts, or at least setting the expectations up front, saying, hey, this is what I'm delivering you for this amount of money. Like, what are you doing? I don't like, you could do whatever on a handshake, but if someone decides to, change their mind or they interpret things differently, where does that leave you at the end of the day? And for the contractor, I can usually comfortably say they usually get the wrong end of the stick on most of those.
Always. Like Costa has a good story too on just like, even going back to that pen and paper, right? Like he had arborists come to his house. And one of the guys, you've probably heard this story, right? You've heard this one, Ben?
It's funny because I'm like, oh, I know you guys so well. I know all these stories. Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. So it's like, the guy gave him, chicken scratch on a piece of paper to a point he couldn't even read it. Like it was actually like I feel bad for the guy, because he's probably great at his craft, right? But
And he
again,
was. That's the whole thing that gets me. He was the. I had three quotes. He was the best one where we got along. You could tell he's really good. But like he gives me this quote that like I couldn't even read, and like I'm busy. I'm not gonna like call him like, hey, what is this number? Like, what does this say? Like, so I just went with the next quote, the second best, who just sent me a quote like digitally. I approved it. Not thinking about it. So yeah, and it gets me thinking, like, imagine how many jobs this really skilled guy is missing out on because of just how he's sending quotes.
Ben, you mentioned you were talking about contracts and the importance of them. Me and you have had numerous talks about issues with contract or general contractors not wanting to pay. Can you give us like an example of something that's happened in your career where a contract saved you and just kind of got you out of a jam? And
Can I add to that too?
yeah,
Just because literally 2 days ago, someone I know called me and is like, he's another contractor. He's like, hey, I've been waiting for payment from this general contractor since the summer. Like, what do I do? So, add to Charlie's question, like, maybe provide some insight on what to do in a situation like that.
Okay, that's a loaded question. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can think of lots of things, especially since let's take change orders for example, right? Like just looking at the scope of work, setting out the expectations for your client before you jump in and do the job. If you don't have that contract with a good scope of work in it, like what happens when the client's like, oh, I thought you were putting in pot lights over here. Well, no, that's not in the scope of work, nor is it in the contract, but we can make you a change order to do that. If you don't have those things in place or those clauses in place, you could end up in a lot of trouble because there's a lot of times. One that I recently learned is if you're doing a design build for someone and you didn't get electrical drawings in quite a few jurisdictions, if you made a mistake and suddenly the city asked for electrical drawings, you could be on the hook to pay for those electrical drawings to prove that your design build is correct. So having a clause in there that says, hey, you came to us, you asked us to do this work, this is all we're doing. If they don't, like if the city requires anything else, that's not our responsibility. It's what you call an indemnification clause from something like that. You could be in a heap of trouble. Knowing this stuff is really important as a business owner. And please, guys out there, I am not a lawyer. Don't take this as legal advice. Talk to a lawyer, but at least know the basics of what you should have in your contract. Like one that we came across fairly recently within the last couple of years, a lot of pay when paid clauses. And I was going to say, imagine throwing one of those on that bill for the restaurant that you were talking about, Johnny. It's like, if I don't get paid, no one else for this job is getting paid. And you see that in a lot of subcontracts. So you really have to go through those terms and conditions and be careful. Another one to maybe do some research on for people out there. I don't know. Do you guys do a lot of CCDC contract work?
CCDC, yeah, CCDC, CCAs.
Yeah, exactly. So some very like run of the mill common contract language and contracts to use where a big contractor can pay to have these things rather than paying for a full contract to be written. A lot of the time, though, like the CCDC ones can be very slanted to the general contractors, the owner's favor. So you're going to want to know a few things about that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because we just had one. We just had one where it was a CCDC 17, but they made a bunch of amendments. So it's already geared towards the GC to protect the GC. Plus, they made so many amendments to it that I literally turned around and I said, look, I'm just going to make one comment here. I'm going to say, I'm adding one thing because a lot of times they take it in a way where you're trying to screw them too. It's like, I want you to add one clause here that basically says you're following my quote and I want a signature on my quote. You know what I mean? Because now you can say whatever you want. You add in that clause, I'm going to list it all out the way I want it to be done. You know what I mean? I'm going to put my payment terms, right? It might contradict yours, but you just signed on mine as well, right? So I'll sign yours, but you got to sign mine, right? So in the event that you do try to screw me, I can come after you as well. And a lot of people, they feel this, I find a lot of guys, they're almost like scared to speak up, right? Because it's like, man, I don't want to lose this contract. And it's like, no, I get it. But what happens if you do this contract, right? And especially when you're talking CCDCs and CCAs, you're signing your life away. So what happens if that guy doesn't pay you? What is that going to do to you and your company and potentially like your personal like financials, right? So why does it hurt to just tell them, you know, hey, I'm going to send you a quote, put a signature here. This is going to protect me. This is going to protect you. Because now everything I put on this quote, if it is the scope of work you're asking me to do, this is protecting you. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's protecting me, right? And I never understood these guys, why they're scared to speak up. And I think it comes back to that thing that you said, Ben, where it's like, we operate in a totally different manner than anybody. We truly do. And
well, Johnny, a lot of these guys feel pressured into this, right? You know, like just think about it. You get to a point where you've been a medium-sized company, and all of a sudden, this potentially humongous, game-changing job falls on your lap, and then you're presented with this contract with all this like lawyer needs, like you said, lawyer talk and mumbo jumbo, and you don't understand half of it, and then you're going to look at it and, like Ben said, it's going to favor the contractor probably 95%, right? The general. And you're going to feel as if, well, if I say no to this, I'm going to lose the job, right? You can't sell yourself short. You can't let them bully you. A contract goes both ways, right? So anybody listening to this, make sure that you put it in the hands of a lawyer who understands this language. He can read through it, and that's going to also take care of your needs and say, okay, well, what do you like in this contract? What don't you like, so we can make notes? And what is crucial to have in here for your side, to represent your side, right? And as much as you feel like you're being pushed into a corner, and if you say no, it's going to be taken away from you, this is a negotiation, right? No, but they're handing you a contract. If you make notes and you make suggestions and you come back to them and say, hey, look, this is what I need from you guys. If they are truly someone that wants to work with you and that you're going to want to work with, for years to come, then they will be the people that will look at you and say, you know what, we respect what you did. Let us look at it, have our lawyers look at it, and if we have any issues, we'll come back once again, right? And it's a back and forth until you guys can come to terms. But
yeah,
the point
we
being,
used to do that a lot.
Don't be intimidated by them.
Well, we used to do that a lot, and we used to get lawyers to just read our contracts, and it used to cost us a lot of money. Where now, again, you send a quote, through a platform, and it's just like, look, man, okay, you want me to sign this? No problem. But you have to add in this term, reference my quote, reference that, you're going to fulfill what's on my quote, and sign on my quote, right? And, truthfully, that's how we've been able to mitigate a lot of these lawyer fees now, right? When going through these contracts. And getting back to what you said too, Ben, I'm telling you, man, I can't tell you how many times we'll get a purchase order and payment terms, PWP. I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, PWP. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I call a contractor. I'm like, what is this PWP? He's like, pay when paid, right? So I go back to my lawyer and I'm like, hey, this is what it says. He goes, hold on, he just sent you a CCDC 17. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, the payment terms, they abolished the CCDC 17, so you can let your client know that, because the CCDC 17 is you got to adhere by the Construction Act, right? Which is, now in Ontario, I don't know how it is there, but it's the prompt payment, right? Which is 30 days. So if you want me to sign your contract, but then you're amending it, then what's the point of signing a CCDC 17 now? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's funny that a lot of guys, they get scared into these signatures and asking for something just to protect themselves, right? And I tell everybody, I don't care if it's your neighbor. You know what I mean? If the guy's going to pay you, like if you're not doing a favor, You know what I mean? Or the guy's just going to pay your material and you're kind of just, doing something. If it's through the actual business, you know what I mean, that you're doing an actual job, doesn't matter if it's the guy down the street, your dad's friend, doesn't matter. Just send the quote, get a signature, right? In the event, right? I always compare it to insurance, right? You don't get car insurance after you got into an accident, right? You buy car insurance to put the car on the road, hoping you never get into that accident. But God forbid something happens, guess what? You have the insurance, right? It's the same thing with getting them to sign your quote, right? That's a legal binding document. You know what I mean? And again, like on a platform like ours, the way we've done it is when you're sending a quote and you're asking for that signature, there is some legal terminology there that we paid construction lawyers to put there. So use it to your advantage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And that it stop the argument before it even starts, right? Like set the expectations ahead of time. If everybody knows what the playing field is, it's way easier to navigate. And then I had a thought and I just lost it.
It's okay. But adding to that though, and I know we're not lawyers here, but in the event like you don't get paid, like what are some actionable steps that the average contractor could do? I'm afraid to ask Johnny this one because I know it's a PG show. So Ben, maybe you can
Well,
take
ask
this one.
Johnny. I want to hear.
Nah, he's saying that because we just had a conversation earlier today about this.
I think a lot of contractors have this conversation. Actually, I don't think anyone ever like really puts it out there. But yeah, no, you're totally right. Like you can always go to small claims court. Like here in Manitoba, it's like anything below 15 grand. I think you could take to small claims court. You can do that yourself fairly. It's fairly easy. It's made to be kind of an approachable process. You go down to the courts and you file some paperwork. You give them your evidence, and then you'll generally get a hearing, and a judge will make a decision. If it's above 15 grand, you're probably going to have to get a lawyer involved. Or you will. I don't recommend you represent yourself.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you can lien properties. Even if you're doing, say, like a tenant fit up at a strip mall, you can lien that property. And now not only is the tenant sort of on the hook for that, and a lot of leases, if you lien the property, that lease is in danger. So the tenant has even more reason to pay the contractor, but then the landlord might even get involved. So there's a lot of helpful ways like that you can sort of use these little things to incentivize people to make sure you get paid.
Just to add quickly to that, because I'm happy you had brought up the change orders, right? And especially with change orders, when you're already on a job, you have a contract, but you might get comfortable with the person, you might build a relationship, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of additional work that happens, and then they say, yeah, you know what, go ahead and do it. You have my blessing, right? Take the time, write up a proper change order, again with the contract, have it signed, because this day and age, it's like you're only as good as your last job, and there might be the job might be running smoothly, but there might be a disagreement on the additional work that was done, and you didn't do a proper contract, and you didn't get a proper change order, and all of a sudden this derails the whole entire relationship because of that, right? So just to kind of like reflect on the importance of the contracts, that you have to put pen on paper or digital contract, whatever it may be, just to protect yourself, right? Me and Johnny have been fortunate that we've only had to lien one property in the last 16 years. And
Two.
I don't know, John, two? Was it two? Well, from what I remember, it was a fairly simple process. And honestly, we had a contract. Everything was in our favor, so we did everything the right way. Sometimes it's just unavoidable, and this is what weeds out the bad relationships from the good ones. And unfortunately, you have to try people out when you're starting out in the beginning. But yeah, I don't know, John. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, no, I don't want to tell everybody, but basically the reality is this, especially when you're starting out, or you're dealing with a contractor that came recommended from somebody. The reality is that when you're dealing with money, and people have to understand that, as a GC, as a developer, there's a lot of bills that they're flipping, right? And unfortunately, the reality is that, look, a lot of them you're important to pay, but if they run into money issues, guess who's the first people that are not getting paid, right? So I always say that a lot of times when people are scared to get a contract signed or ask people to sign a quote, you know, and I always recommend digitally, because digitally always leaves like a footprint, right? That it was actually them, right? So that they can't say, oh, that wasn't my signature or whatever. The reality is that you're leaving all your money in the hands of somebody that you're hoping is financially sound, you know, has their stuff in order. You know what I mean? So that's why I always say, like, even as a contractor, to start using a software, because you know it's putting this thing out where it's like, okay, look, my finances, the way I do things, they're all in order. You know, I'm using a software that helps me, tracks things. I send a quote, I get a signature, it stores it, right? So when you're sending it to somebody like that, that you're hoping has their affairs in order, right? You can kind of see firsthand who actually, you know, is using something themselves to organize their life and who's not, right? Because again, you look at a site like you said, Ben, you know, on a tenant fit up inside a strip mall, right? You're an electrician. Well, guess what? That GC has an electrician, a plumber, a drywaller, you know, a roofer, an HVAC guy, sprinkler guy, you know, flooring guy, painting guy, you know what I mean? So imagine all these things that are coming in there, right? You have to protect yourself, right? The number one goal is protect your money. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. My thought just came back, moreover, to a couple of points here. If you go back, like when Charlie was talking about this is a negotiation, it's totally a negotiation. And I have found more often than not, if you go back to the GC with a marked up contract and you have legitimate reasons and you have some knowledge behind those reasons, you will impress the GC and you'll gain more respect because it gives you competence. Competence usually it ups your status in the eyes of the people you're trying to sell to, and then they think this guy actually knows what he's doing. He's been through this before, and you know, that kind of competence leads to trust.
That's a very
100%.
good point.
Yeah,
That's a good
very well
point. A lot
said.
of
Very
people
well
look at
said.
it like the negative, like marking up a contract is going to be deemed as like a bad thing. But yeah, you're totally right. I think it's way more positive than negative.
They look at it as like, I'm going to be inconveniencing this person, but at the end of
Yeah,
the day, the person
not the case.
no, it's not. The person who's receiving it fully well understands what this is about, right? That it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So touching on, like, you know, just your involvement in the industry, advocacy, like you said, I know you're now involved in one of the local construction contracting associations in your area. Talk about that. Like, what made you, you know, join that association? What kind of benefits do you get?
Sly dog. So yeah, well,
Slick with it.
yeah.
Can you tell why he's my business partner?
Yeah, right? I'm jealous. Um, the Electrical Contract Association of Manitoba. So what was it last year? I got a shout, and they wanted me to sort of tell ECAM about Jobtable. And in my speaking with the director back and forth, maybe 3 or 4 times, they were trying to sell me on becoming a member. Now, I'm a former union guy. I worked for many, many companies, and ECAM on the surface felt like that kind of boys club, like, you know, I don't belong here, that sort of feeling. After talking to them for a little bit, I did go and have some meetings. We did. They asked me to join the membership committee, which is exactly where we spoke about Jobtable, and that's all part of the advocacy, right? Like getting in there and talking about membership, talking about government, things like that. That's why some of these organizations exist, is to lobby provincial governments and local municipalities, things like that, for better circumstances, you know, better bylaws, changes within the industry that benefit contractors and construction workers in the industry as a whole. But yeah, the whole catalyst of me getting in there was Jobtable. So it's just funny how all these little things are
Yeah.
connected. And I was in City Hall last week speaking with a city councilor about permits and inspections and making better processes for contractors, things like that. And the counselor that I was speaking with, unbeknownst to me, sat on a committee on another city in Manitoba with the director of ECAM. So it's funny how intertwined all of
Yeah.
these things become.
Yeah. Would you encourage other contractors to get involved with their local associations?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to solve a lot of those problems that other small businesses are seeing, go and talk to other small businesses who are in the middle of the struggle, right? Talk to ones who have, if you're in year 3, you're seeing year 3 struggles, talk to the guy who's 10 years down the road, because he's already past that point, right? He made those milestones, he figured out those problems, and he succeeded. Even find people further than that down the line, and you'll just find not only a wealth of knowledge, but oftentimes relationships. Like I know Johnny loves to say, don't go after the money, go after the relationships, and that was one of the values that I built my company on. Relationships are always more important than money, but even if it's a bunch of electricians going through ECAM and talking to those guys, I have got jobs from them to do certain things that I am really, really good at that they maybe don't have a ton of skill in. So
Yeah.
you never know where you're going to get your next meal from.
Yeah,
And also
for sure.
too, it's powered by numbers, right? So if you ever want to change any kind of legislation, all of these issues that we've been talking about on this episode, it's going to be a lot easier to do it with fellow contractors on your side, right? And associations backing you.
Yeah.
100%.
And I always like to look at things like with associations, right? Like I like to look at things in terms like ROI, whether it's like you're spending time or money, like what am I getting in return? So like from your experience, would you say the biggest return you're getting, is it more like the relationships and like the knowledge and the learning, or is it like financial return with like more jobs because of the connections or stuff like that?
Definitely relationships and learning, for sure. That's been number one, and ECAM in particular runs a ton of little courses, right? Like they just had one on grounding and bonding. So if you find the code around grounding and bonding difficult, go in there and figure it out. Like they'll teach you. So there's so many different opportunities. And again, just like we're talking about software and the different way people use software, you can find tricks and hacks with these associations to sort of find what you need, and you might even find some hidden things you didn't realize you needed.
Yeah, and that's true, right? Often people will think like, "Oh, what's the financial return?" But I strongly believe the knowledge is way more valuable than a financial return.
You can break just about everything down into money. So even if it's knowledge, like an education is expensive. Think about how much money we as business owners have pissed away into the wind learning things the hard way. Like if you had a place that could teach you that for a small investment rather than throwing your money away on trial and error, how valuable is that?
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
100%. Yeah. Way well said.
Yeah. Last topic here, I want to quickly pull up is something we spoke about in the past, but it keeps coming up, and I'd love to get your thoughts, Ben. So this is a recent article that's kind of been making the headlines here. So this is NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, says electricians and plumbers will be needed by the hundreds of thousands in the new working world. And just for those who don't know, NVIDIA is the most valuable company in the world as of right now. Like in terms of market cap, they're worth like $4.5 billion. And because they design and manufacture computer chips, like GPUs that power all these AI systems, right? So like AI companies buy these chips because of their training and running their models and stuff like ChatGPT and all of them. So they've been on a complete tear. So yeah, this is an article coming from their CEO, and it's all about like if you're an electrician, you're a plumber, a carpenter, you're going to need hundreds of thousands of them to build all these factories. Frank told Channel 4 News. So this is something we keep seeing, and what I find interesting is a lot of these. A lot of the people that are saying this stuff, they're high-powered CEOs who run the biggest companies and I think they're looking like years, if not decades ahead, and they're kind of seeing what's happening. And when you keep hearing this, it's kind of inevitable. You kind of see what's happening before our eyes with what AI and technology is doing and displacing a lot of these like traditionally like white collar jobs that you had to go to school for and get your degree and all this. Those are being totally wiped out, for lack of a better term, and displaced and not being as valued. Whereas the value now is in trades. Like these are the skills that are going to make a lot of millionaires and billionaires over the next decades. So, what are your thoughts on just like technology, AI, how that's impacting your trade?
Well, I definitely think that the trades are certainly valuable and they're going to be valuable for some time. Speaking to the electrical side of things, especially in troubleshooting, if they're building these big factories, they've got a lot of automation, there's a lot of machines running. I think it's going to be very hard for an AI to detect, a corroded wire, on terminal 3 of the PLC bus, in a various cabinet. I mean, maybe we'll get to that point, but we're certainly nowhere near it now. So you definitely need well-trained guys to look for things like that. And troubleshooting, I think, is a totally separate skill from a lot of others that you'll see in the trades. But I definitely think there's some value there. The other side of that is we've done quite a bit of automation work for various places. We were in a factory, so they were expanding, they were doubling their size. So literally, this place was going to be split in half. One half is very automated. The other half has a lot of manpower. So what we've seen is on the one side, you need maybe 100 employees a day to be running the machines and making the product they make. On the other side, with all the automation, it's unreal. Even the forklift system is completely automated. It has a laser fence system. All these things stay within their own areas. They load the trucks. They wrap the pallets. They do everything. You need maybe 7 people to run the whole thing daily. So automation is definitely going to eat up some jobs. Whether or not that comes for craftsmen, that can be really hard to say. Here's a quick question that came. I've been thinking about this a lot with you guys talking about modular housing. We've had a modular housing sort of manufacturer, kind of a little factory here in Winnipeg that I've been inside and done some work in, and I've seen how they, lay a bunch of 2x4s down. They can build all these walls, on this slab, and then this machine will pick it up and turn it around, and they can build different things onto it. How do you guys feel about it? Do you think AI is going to take over and like an electrician will be replaced where a machine can just run the wires through one wall and then they'll just have a connector, so you throw the walls up, they kind of snap together, and that's your house. You got electrical.
Johnny, what do you think?
I'm torn on this because I know where technology is going, and I don't doubt that they'll try to reach it at one point or another. But you ask me, no matter what it is, and I think I speak for a lot of people, listening here. I know I speak for probably everybody in this, in this room right now. But even to all of our listeners, it's like I'll never buy one of those, man. Like this is the reality. I'm not like no, we talk about this a lot. Like again, we're almost 50 episodes in now, right? And that's why I love doing this, because to get people's insight. But I miss craftsmanship. You know what I mean? Like I know, like especially like here in Toronto, like looking at some of these houses, driving by, and you see, a house that was like what we would consider like now like a castle, and it's like you're driving by and just the stonework alone, you know what I mean? And it's like, man, like somebody carved that. You see what I'm saying? Like that's craftsmanship. Right? Now you're going to tell me you're going to slap these 4 walls together and this machine's going to flip it around and do this and do that. Like, look, the reality is if you're on a stringent budget and and it's the difference between renting or buying, and you can buy one of those and own it, and you know what I mean? Like put your family in there, like a place to call your home. Look, 100%, right? Like, what are you going to do? Right? When life throws you lemons, you make lemonade. Yeah. What are you going to do? But the reality is for, like I can't see a lot of contractors saying like, oh yeah, I can't wait to buy myself, a modular home and move into there, right? Like it's ridiculous. And getting back to like that article that you said, Costa, I was having this conversation this week actually with on that same article. He brought it up, that plumbers and electricians are going to be the new white collar, like millionaires and billionaires. The reality is again, you want to build these facilities, you want to build these like server farms and AI like facilities and everything like that. It's like, well, guess what? You need the tradesmen. You know what I mean? And the reality is if a lot of people are starting to get their jobs knocked out, right? Then and you're going to leave it to because you're seeing this a lot here in Toronto. I don't know if you're seeing it there in Winnipeg, but you're seeing a lot of these massive companies kind of gobbling up more of the smaller companies. You know what I mean? They're kind of like creating this monopoly in the construction industry. And the reality is okay, if this was a $50 million project, well, guess what? There's only a few companies now that can do that size project, and it's no longer 50 million. Now it's going to cost you 120 million. You know what I mean? And you have no choice, right? Amazon, you want to build this here? This is what it is. Home Depot, you want to build this distribution factory, and you want to have all AI, and you want it all automated, and you want this and that and that. Guess what? You need tradesmen, right? So I do believe in what the CEO of NVIDIA is saying is that to replace us, it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard, and if you do, I'm sorry, like the one thing that everybody will say, if you're a human and you have that human instinct in you, it's like, where's the craftsmanship? Like where is it? Where is it knowing that this was hand done, and this was you go to these elaborate houses. There's a reason why that kitchen costs you $200,000, and you're walking in there and it's like, oh my God, $200,000 for kitchen cabinets. Yeah, because most likely those are hand, like, there's something to those cabinets that people want hand done. You know what I mean? You can't just get AI to replace absolutely everything. That's my take on it personally.
So with the modular specifically, I agree and kind of disagree as well. So for like obviously like the custom homes and like the intricacies, it might be harder at least for now, but I strongly believe the technology with these modular homes, if it's not already there now, it'll get to the point where it's indistinguishable whether it's people built it by hand or a modular home. I could maybe make the argument that the modular homes might be even better in terms of quality. So yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. But back to you mentioned Amazon, and it's funny because I wanted to bring this up about I just saw this yesterday about job losses and stuff. So this was actually I think it was a leaked memo within Amazon. So they have they're expecting to lay off 600,000 people in Amazon. So that's pretty crazy too.
A lot of jobs.
500,000 jobs. Like that's wild.
Yeah.
And just to replace them with robotics, like in their warehouses.
Yeah, look, it's like we talk about all the time. It's inevitable. It's coming. You're better to embrace it than not. But again, getting back to what like you were saying, Costa, how you're gonna push back. Like, look, like you said, NVIDIA, they make the chips for these AI, right? There's a reason why he's saying that, because I think in order to fully replace us, again, I think like these modular homes and stuff like that. This is I strongly believe it's geared more towards like affordable housing. You see what I mean?
For now, yeah.
Yeah.
You also got to take into account how fast and exponential this technology is moving.
It's
not far-fetched to say like you can build a crazy ass custom home that's modular.
Yeah, and listen, you're 100% correct on that, but I'll just say, for let's say high-end clients, more intricate projects, I still think that, again, that's why the CEO was saying that. I think it's gonna be a very long time before they fully replace, plumbers, electrician, HVAC guys. I think that they're still going to need that need. It's like Ben said, okay, you had this AI build this modular home. Okay, now there's a problem. Is AI going to go in there and fix it, or do you need human interaction, right? Do you need an actual tradesman to go in there and fix it, right?
Well, you have to keep in mind too that like where we live is a city that's already built, right? And if you look at a city like New York, there is no real estate, open real estate in New York. Everything has been built up. So there's always going to be a need for plumbers and service and renovations where buildings are getting gutted and redone, right? But in areas where, more rural areas where you have a lot of open space, there's going to be the opportunity for these modular homes to just kind of get dropped in. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of acres of land that's just going to be built up in probably in a matter of months, right? That's just the reality of it. But to your point, where I feel like jobs are secure is where you have existing buildings that need to be serviced, right? There's no more land to build on.
What do you think, Ben?
Well, I think there's merits to a lot of things. Here, one thing I'll say that kind of I was thinking about when Johnny was talking. There's a UK businessman I listen to his podcast. His name's Stephen Bartlett, and he was talking about AI and how AI is going to be creating things. And he had this expensive T-shirt that he likes to wear, and he got an insider's view of how they make that T-shirt. And his vision is, well, I pay so much money for this thing that somebody's hand making it in a factory somewhere, and I'm getting this quality piece of craftsmanship that I wear every day. And he saw this in the video. He saw this machine spitting out tons of them, and the owner of the company just sort of like raking a bunch up from this huge vat of just like tens of thousands of them. And it ruined his perception of this brand because he thought he was getting this quality piece of craftsmanship he paid a lot of money for, when really it's just a mass-produced piece that's coming out of a bin of millions of them. So I think perception is a big one. I think there's definitely going to be a market for things that are human-made, especially as you see like AI creating podcasts in the voice of these other sort of celebrity entrepreneurs. There's definitely going to be a market for it in the future. How that aligns with construction, I'm really interested to see, but I think there's merits to kind of both sides of that argument.
Yeah, and I think there's historical, like you kind of see there's similar examples, right? Like, take diamonds now, right? You have lab diamonds that have totally diluted the value of a real diamond now, right? They're next to worthless.
Yeah,
But yeah, like you said, there is still like a small market who looks at like a real diamond, but just because they like, the fact that it's real, but it's still not worth what it once was. It's really just like perception.
Well, I think it is perception. It's in the eye of the purchaser, right? It's in the eye of the beholder in the end of it, because that's actually a great like analogy there, Costa. Like a great comparison is lab diamonds, right? So yeah, what makes this lab diamond different than this one, right? Well, to a lot of people, and I'll like, I remember having this conversation even with my wife personally, right? So it's like, an actual diamond takes millions of years, you know what I mean, to actually form, right? Where this one is just made in a lab. So getting back to, that person that you listen to, Ben, on the podcast, he buys an expensive T-shirt, because it's handmade, but then he sees that the machines are coming out. I guarantee you that guy will never buy another T-shirt from them, right? So that's why I say I think look, AI is here. It's obviously, it's evolving very fast, and just words right out of Costa's mouth, and he's been right on a lot of this stuff. It's like you either embrace it or you're going to fall behind, right? And it's very true. But at the same time, I think it can only go so far, to a point where, sure, okay, well, AI is going to build this, AI is going to build that, AI is going to build this, AI is going to build that. Okay, cool. But also the end user who's actually buying something has to want it from there, right? Now, again, okay, if you're talking, simple day-to-day stuff, like, shoes, right? So, if somebody's, going to their wedding and they want those handmade shoes, sure, they can get shoes that look like those, for a fraction of the price because it's, made in machines. But a lot of times, it's my special day, right? Like, no, I want something, handmade or hand leather or this or that. Like, even remember Costa at the Bitcoin conference, right? This was the whole thing behind like putting value behind like actual labor. You know what I mean? Like, why is that modular house now worth 300,000? You know what I mean?
Honest,
Like, tell me
honestly, though,
why.
like, I think this is our generation though. I think that's going to fizzle out. Like using Costa's example of the lab diamonds, what's the difference between a lab diamond and a regular diamond? Absolutely nothing. If it's inspected under a microscope, you cannot tell the difference because it is still a diamond. The carbons are pressed together and you cannot tell. It has to be laser etched in order to be distinguished, right? So if you take a modular home, you're going to have a lot of people that look at these houses and say, why would I spend $1 million to build a custom home when I can pay 30% of that and have a modular home just placed down on a plot of land? And once you're inside, you can't tell the difference. I think guys like us who have been kind of like half in the past and half in the future are very privileged to have seen both sides of it. But that is quickly disappearing. The youth, the generations that are coming up don't value the things that we value. They don't value sitting around, or going to, perfect example, going to Blockbuster on a Friday night, getting your popcorn and spending 30 minutes picking out a movie to come home and just to sit as a family and watch one movie, where now it's just an endless stream of movies that are just rotting your brains. Nobody cares. You can't even finish a movie. It's on to the next one. And we don't appreciate any of these things. So I agree in the sense that guys like us will look for I want the handcrafted table, I want the leather handmade shoes, because we understand how valuable it is. But the kids coming up and the future generations, that will slowly disappear with time. And eventually you're just gonna have these mundane cities that are almost just unrecognized, like identical to each other, whether you're in New York, Toronto, everything's going to look the same. I think everything's going to feel the same. The culture is slowly going to disappear. And that's why AI to me and the speed of this technology is very, very scary. And I almost feel like we're the architects of our own demise. And I truly believe that. We're going to look back we've gone way too far. And there's going to be no turning back. And it's at what cost? Oh, well, this technology, we have to go with the times, right? Where we have the ability to press the stop button for the sake of, but then there's also the counter argument where, you might lose. Amazon's going to fire 600,000 people, but all of these AI technologies coming out are also going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in different places.
Yeah, well, look, just to play. Just one last note on that, Charlie, and I agree with you. But the reality is that, look, we even talked about it on an episode, and we've talked about it a lot of times just personally, right? Just traveling. So, you take, like I get it with the future generations, but look, you walk downtown Toronto and you walk downtown, Barcelona, there's massive differences. Why? Because of the character, right? Of the workmanship, of the craftsmanship, right? Remember, we talked about this, right? So what I'm hopeful for, and I do agree with you that we're half in the past and half in the future. And I believe truthfully that we grew up in probably the best period of time where, we grew up before the internet, and then we were here for the beginning of the internet, and seeing the evolution of it is crazy. So just imagine like what the next generations are going to do. But I'm hopeful that they'll also look at it after a while when you're walking into, let's just say, a modular city, and you look up and it's like, man, like there's no character here, right? Like we say all the time, like when you walk into these old cities in Europe, like there's something about it, right? Where it's just like, wow, like look how beautiful that is, like just to sit there on the piazza and have a coffee and look at it, right? Like let's be honest, what is there to do in these big cities to sit there and look at what? Like a glass building, you know what I mean, with absolutely no character. I think that's where I come back to that. I'm very hopeful that people will still value what somebody can do with their hands. You know what I mean? And getting back to the trades, that's where I'm hoping that
I don't think they will.
It's going to be very hard to fizzle us out because
I don't think they will, John. I really don't. And no, and I say that because because of the cost of living, the way the world is going, people can barely afford to eat. A good example of this is I was recently in Chicago, and I took a boat tour through the river which goes through the city, and you look at all the buildings that have gone up, and it really looks like no cost was spared, right? It was just like an architectural marvel after another, one after another, after another. And it wasn't like I'm going to spend the most amount of money to build the best building to make me the most amount of money. It was like there was pride in it. Like everybody wanted to up the next guy, right, and show them up.
Yeah.
But then you look at a city like ours in Toronto, where every single building is being built as cheap as possible in order to pack as many people in there as possible to turn the biggest profit, right? And you're seeing that because of the times, because of the cost of living, because it's a lot harder to make. If you flip a house 15, 20 years ago, you could have easily made $300,000, $400,000 on a flip. Now it's very hard to do that. You're making maybe 50,000, maybe 100 if you're lucky, right? So I just feel like the way that the ship is going in, it's very unlikely for people to just kind of snap out of it and just turn back to architecture and quality, right?
Well, let me ask you, Ben, and with all that being said, are you hopeful with the generations to come that, you know, we'll go back to, let's just call it, you know, where people value, like, you know, the craftsmanship of what somebody can do with their hands?
I'm definitely hopeful. Back to Charlie's diamond. So here's the difference between your two diamonds. The story. One of them took millions of years and tons of pressure to grow in the earth. Somebody had to skillfully mine it out, cut it, and then build this piece of jewelry that you get to put on your finger. The other one was done in Dave's backyard.
But the problem with that is once it gets to the store, right? This generation no longer cares about that. They're going to hold up two identical pieces and say, I can either spend $1,000 or I can spend $30,000.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be a market for that, right? Like Dollarama exists. There is that market, but with that story, I think as we see a lot of businesses going, like more and more people are working remote. We're getting more and more away from commercial businesses. Like I can't tell you how many bank branches have closed here in Winnipeg over the last 5 years. I think where people live, and the aesthetic of it and how it feels is going to be more and more important and influential in people's lives, especially the ones that start working at home and working remotely. I think remote work is going to increase, and people buy on status and reputation, right? I think those are the two biggest factors in people making purchases. So I'm hopeful that we'll get back to people wanting those sorts of things. They want a piece of craftsmanship. They want a story behind the things that they own, rather than everyone just having the exact same thing. Like, oh yeah, I got a Dave's diamond. They're all grown in Dave's garage sort of thing, right? I got one that was actually mined out of the ground, and somebody had to, a goldsmith had to make this ring and, put time and effort into cutting the diamond and making sure it fit perfectly into the thing. But I think there's lots of merits to what you're saying too, Charlie.
No, and honestly, I don't disagree with you. There's always going to be a group of people who are after those things. But what I'm talking about more is the general population, right? Because if we're talking about, can we turn the ship around? Can we right the ship, right? Can we stop, the jobs getting cut in half, in the trades? Then it comes down to the general population and their sentiment. And I don't think their sentiment will ever change. Now, will there always be guys like us who appreciate, the finer things in life? Absolutely, right? We're not going to go buy the cheap wine. We want a nicer bottle, right? We want the nicer things. There's always going to be people like that in the world, but we're a very small minority, right? So a small minority is not going to be able to right the ship, is what I'm saying, when it comes to construction.
That's true. Last point on this, again, I just keep coming back to history. Like, look at pearls, right? At one point, natural pearls were like very prized for their rarity, right? But with the invention of like cultured pearls, which is kind of the same as like these diamonds, these lab diamonds, it just made pearls widely available. And today, there's only like a very small like pocket of people, like niche collectors, who still value like that natural pearl. So it's like just what Charlie said. There's always going to be people who value that craftsmanship, but it's just going to be a small minority, right? But we'll see. Who are we to know? Anyways, this was a really fun chat, guys. Ben, really appreciate your time here. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I hope you had a good time here, because I did.
Always. Thanks for having me. Hopefully we can do it again someday.
We definitely will.
Yeah, for sure, man. You got to be
Definitely will.
you got to be a regular here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, this was one of the more fun ones we've had. And yeah, and lastly, guys, if you're a contractor, you're looking to keep everything in one place without the headaches, go to jobtable.com, start a free trial, check it out. And if you enjoyed this episode, got any value from it, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations that can help you build a stronger business. Until next time, guys, see you soon.
Hold on. One sec. You forgot to ask Ben the $1 million question.
No.
Go, ask it.
With all of your years, go ahead.
Yeah, go. If you can put on a billboard something you've learned, like in construction or business, for the world to see, like every contractor to see, what would it say?
Ooh, I think mine might be a little cheesy, and I think people might not appreciate it as much as I do. But there's a little story with it. So, like, I don't think people realize the value of believing in yourself and believing that you can do it. And it hit me one day. I was watching Cars 3 with my kid. And the two, Lightning McQueen. Everyone,
Yeah,
I hope everyone knows
classic.
Lightning McQueen. Yeah. So there's he's got a trainer, this little race car, who didn't make it, right? And she's asking him, like, I went to my first race and I just saw all these race cars out there and I just couldn't do it. You know, when you went to your first race, how did you know? How did you realize that you could get out there and be a champion? And he looked at her and he was like, I don't know. I just never thought that I couldn't. Like,
I love
go
it.
out
Yeah.
there, guys. And
Yeah.
you never couldn't.
100%.
Right?
I love it.
So I think just believing in yourself, and I think that's I think it's maybe a rare commodity these days. I think guys have too many doubts. So
For sure.
I love
that
it.
makes sense.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right,
Great,
guys.
thank you.
No problem, man.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks again. We'll definitely
Thank
be in
you,
touch.
guys. Sounds
Okay.
great.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
boys. Ciao.
Bye. Bye.